of extreme honor for me to moderate this event today. With an endeavor to accelerate the transition towards a circular economy, ICC is one of the largest international networks of professionals, corporates, and organizations working on the principles of circular economy. ICC has a global footprint and facilitates in planning as well as execution of circular economy strategies. Today, there is no doubt in the fact that the sustainability movement is growing day by day. Social consciousness is spread throughout many facets of life, and many companies are making a concerted effort to align with these principles. With a growing focus on social responsibility globally, many investment management companies are including environmental, social, and governance aspects in their decision making. Keeping in mind the recent uptick in investor demand for ESG, ICC, in collaboration with Azyro Infratech and Almadar, has organized this webinar on strategic direction, challenges, and opportunities in ESG. Without any further ado, I would like to welcome our first presenter for today, Mr. Nishant Parekh. Nishant is a sustainability professional with 10 plus years of experience. He has worked across diverse industries like energy, chemical, financial services, and now healthcare. At Philips, he is part of the circular economy and transformation team and is driving the business towards Philips 2025 ESG targets. Nishant holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and an MA from Nine Road University. Today, Nishant will talk about the importance of ESG, identifying and mitigating sustainability challenges, focusing on the ESG commitments of Philips. So I'll hand over the mic to you, Nishant.
Yes, thank you very much, Suzanne. Let me share my screen and also share my presentation.
Sure.
Just a second. There's some problem. Just give me 1 second.
Of course, sure. Meanwhile, I also welcome Ms. Namita Vikas here. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Suzanne, for that lovely introduction. I hope all of you can see my screen. And is it also in the presentation mode now?
Yes, but it's not in the presentation mode. It
Is
is
it now?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Great. Thank you all. And thank you, Suzanne. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. My name is Nishant Parekh, and I work in the group sustainability team within Philips. I'm based out of Amsterdam, Netherlands. And today I would like to share Philips' journey on ESG. And I hope to share some insights and knowledge towards you on how we as Philips are doing business responsibly and sustainably. So in terms of the agenda that I would go through today is the pressing need for change of why we need to shift towards more focus towards environmental, social, and governance related topics, and how should we embed that into our businesses? What is Philips' purpose? How we as Philips are translating our ESG commitments into actions? How are we receiving our external credentials? How are we being recognized externally? And what are the key takeaways from this session? If I start with really the pressing need for change of why environmental, social, and governance related topics have become extremely important, I would really like to, maybe some of you might have seen, there was a news article yesterday that the Dutch court has ruled against the oil giant Shell that they must cut the carbon emissions by 45% by 2020. This is a landmark case in itself. It's first of its kind, where the court has actually interfered in such kind of a proceeding and also held an organization partially responsible for climate change. And this is first of its kind, and this already iterates the need of why companies should become more and more aware about their environmental pollutions, their social impacts towards society, and how they should take these into account. Now, if you really look at sketch the picture in the global context, what are the key urgent necessities that we need to see, more specifically in the healthcare sector where the Philips operates? There is an increasingly rising cost of healthcare. I think the pandemic has already shown that no one country has the perfect solution to tackle the solutions of to tackle the healthcare challenges that we as humanity face, and different pieces of the puzzle need to be connected with each other. And I think the rising cost is one of the key major factors which needs to be addressed in order to mitigate the challenges of healthcare. The second biggest trend that we really see is more than 50% of the global population lacks access or full coverage to the essential healthcare services. At the same time, what we are currently using in terms of resource is 1.7 times more than what our Earth can really regenerate. And in order to achieve the net substantial carbon reduction in the amount of greenhouse gas emissions we do, we need to take significant measures across different sectors, right from energy to healthcare to food and agriculture and mining. So there are too many global challenges that we see that we as humanity need to solve. At the same time, there is an increasing demand in terms of environmental, social responsibility and sustainability. We see growing expectations from the investors. So how are we moving from short-term financial gains towards really having a positive impact towards our planet and society? The retailers are becoming more conscious about sustainability. Consumers, for example, are also asking on how organizations are tackling the sustainability challenges. For example, a lot of government tenders and government requests now also embed sustainability related requirements. Consumers are expecting companies to take more responsibilities, but at the same time, you really see that employees are also looking for for a purpose in their work, and we want to really contribute something towards the society. Now, if we bring this all of these back to Philips, I think we have a very strong history behind sustainability and social development, and it has always been a priority for us. So back in the 18th and 19th century and the majority of the 20th century, we really focused on social programs for our employees by providing them with social security, for example, pension funds and health insurance, a proper housing, a 5-day work week, and many more. But in 1970s, the society called for a more environmental focused agenda. And that moved our focus towards energy efficiency and also towards substances that are being used in our products. Initially, we focused on our own operations, and then we moved to more towards our products that we offer to our customers. And since 2020, we started to focus and accelerate our sustainability activities across our value chain. And we see that the global healthcare challenges that I just shared with you on the previous slides are something where we are trying to work on and trying to connect our businesses with those agendas. Now, if you really look back to what is Philips' purpose, if you really see, there is a very established link between the human health and sustainability. For example, 16% of all global deaths are due to environmental pollution. So what we as Philips have done is we have set ourselves to a very ambitious target to improve the lives of 2.5 billion people a year by 2030 by making world more healthier and more sustainable through innovation. And in developing this approach, we have adopted the WWF Living Planet report. This report basically looks into the United Nations World Development Index, as well as the ecological footprint of each nation ecological footprint that each nation has on these planets. The circles in the graph that you see basically represents different worlds, the different countries of our worlds, and the relative and the size in the circles show the relative sizes of the population. Basically, the UN Human Development Index that you see in the x-axis of this chart is a measure of countries' achievement based on its economic, health, and social indicators. And the vertical axis represents the resources that a country consumes per capita. So if countries are to continue developing with the current rate of resource consumption, we will face a severe challenge of resource scarcity. So this model outlines that Earth's finite amount of natural resources and the need for smarter solution. And we believe that the yellow spot that you see, a healthier and a more sustainable world, is the sweet spot where we as a humanity should operate in, and different countries should also reduce, more developed or high income countries should reduce their resource consumption. At the same time, the lower and middle income countries should improve their human health development index, but in a very sustainable way. I think this is really summarizes the crux of the solution or the challenge that we have to face, and the solutions that we need to develop. So this was the backdrop of our strategy development at Philips, and that is been translated into uh, our key core strategic goals that are also aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we really focus on 4 sustainable development goals, with 3 being the pillars of our sustainability strategy. The first one is SDG 3, that's good health and well-being, on how we as Philips can improve people's life and well-being, and also expanding access to care or access to healthcare towards the underserved community. The second cornerstone of our strategy is around circular economy and responsible consumption and production. It is to ensure that how can we ensure sustainable use of materials and really drive the transition towards circular economy. And last but also the most relevant one is the climate action, on how can we ensure sustainable use of our energy, reduce our own emissions, but also across our value chain, and how can we operate in a carbon neutral way. I think in order to achieve these SDGs, I think partnership is extremely crucial, and also partnership across our supply chain to create a bigger impact. And that's why SDG 17 is also an important part of our overall strategy. So what have we done so far? I think we have really achieved our 2025 environmental targets and set up for success for 2025 programs or targets. So if you see, go from left to right, we have already generated 70% of our sales from green products and solutions, 15% of our sales from circular products and solutions. We are zero net operational carbon footprint, and 100% of our operations are powered by renewable electricity. 90% of our operational waste is currently being recycled, and 100% of our industrial sites is sending zero waste to landfill. So these are already achievements that we have completed by 2020. And we have set ourselves for even more ambitious targets for 2025. So for SDG 3, we would like to improve the health and well-being of 2 billion people per year through our meaningful innovations. And we want to provide access to care for 300 million people in the underserved communities. On circular economy, we want to increase the revenues from 15% in 2020 to 25% through our circular products, services, and solutions. And more specifically on the climate side, we want to reduce our carbon emissions in line with the 1.5 degree global warming scenario, and really focusing on energy efficiency in our products and also in our customer use phase, because that's where we see majority of our emissions coming from. So really looking at our entire value chain. And with partnerships, we also want to improve the lives of 1 million workers in our supply chain and help them reduce their environmental footprint. So now I would like, this is more at a strategic level. I would like to just share with you a couple of examples across these three SDGs and also what we are doing in these areas. So if we look at access to care and expanding our access to care, we are trying to drive digital and technological innovations along the health continuum. We are trying to develop new business models and financing solutions. And then we are also trying to build strong relationships within the ecosystem of collaboration. I would just take the first example of the mobile intensive care units in India. This was announced also in July 2020, and then it was designed to meet the critical care requirements of patients. So each prefabricated ICU capacity has 9 beds, which would be locally manufactured in India. Each ICU unit can be assembled in one day at a chosen site. And this really leverages on the clinical, technical, and design expertise of Philips to address the challenging needs of critical care services that is required during this COVID times in India. And this has also helped the government agencies and also organizations to enhance their community outreach and to mitigate the impact of natural disasters in pandemics, such as the COVID-19 that we are currently all in. On the circular economy side, I think I already briefly touched upon it. At the World Economic Forum in 2018, Frans van Houten launched a pledge that Philips will be closing the loop for all medical equipments. And by 2020, we have fully closed the loops for all large medical equipments like CT scan, MRI, cardiovascular systems, and we take full control to ensure that all trade-in materials are repurposed in a responsible way. For 2025, we have tried to extend this commitment to offer all trade-in in all professional medical equipments and taking care of it in a responsible and responsible repurposing of the products. And with closing the loop, we mean that taking responsibilities for the equipment that we really put onto the market in this way, which will also help us increase our credibility and also offer new touch points with our customer. And now moving to a very concrete example also on the climate side. We have already achieved carbon neutrality in our own operations in 2020, but we also are committed to continue maintaining that carbon neutrality beyond 2020. And then we will sharpen our further focus towards our supplier base and also towards the entire value chain. So this operational focus is more on our sites, business travel, logistics, and then for all the unavoidable emissions, we are compensating it through carbon offsetting projects. And basically what we have also set up science-based targets, and also our targets are being approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative. So we will reduce 75% reduction in our CO2 emissions for our sites by 2025, and then 4% reduction in our indirect greenhouse gas emissions across our entire value chain. So these are big aspirations and ambitions that Philips wants to achieve, and we're quite confident that we will make it happen. And maybe talking about the whole value chain, what we are also doing quite a lot is to drive sustainability throughout our entire value chain. We have different programs and projects running, right from supplier sustainability compliance on how the product is being sourced, services, and does it meet all the legal requirements, to responsible resourcing of the minerals or materials that we use, greening our supply chain, so really working with the suppliers to align their targets towards the science-based targets and also help emission reduction throughout the supply chain, and then constantly measure supplier sustainability performance. And I think in order to achieve all of these, we are constantly partnering with different agencies, right from, these are some of the leading renowned think tanks, front runners, governmental organizations, and other stakeholders that we partner with in order to drive, yeah, in order to drive the topic further. And just a list of credentials, how we have been recognized globally across different rating agencies. Dow Jones Sustainability Index is an example. We have been number 2 in the industry from 2018 to 2020. We have been on CDP A list. Wall Street Journal has recognized us as number 2 in the global sustainability ranking. These are just some of the credentials that show the efforts that we have been putting into this topic and how we want to drive it further. So a lot of information to digest. If I had to summarize in 4 bullets, so we have a fully integrated approach of doing business responsibly and sustainably. Our goal is to improve the lives of 2.5 billion people by 2030, including 400 million in underserved communities. Our focus is on 3 topics: access to care, circular economy, and climate action. And through this, we will deliver to the SDG goals of 3, 12, and 13. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nishant, for that wonderful presentation. And it was an absolute privilege for us to listen to and know about the fully integrated approach of Philips to do business responsibly and sustainably. And now I'm going to take some questions that we have from the audience. So the first question is from Mr. Awatif Nishant. Mr. Awatif wants to know about carbon footprint calculator. So are there any measurement being assessed on ESG or achieving the sustainability among the industries?
So that there are yes. So there are a couple of renowned standards that can be leaned on. So I think the greenhouse gas reporting protocol is one of those reporting protocols which has tried to set a standard on how you could measure greenhouse gas across your organization. So it also divides the greenhouse gas emissions in scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. So scope 1 is more towards your direct emissions, scope 2 more towards the indirect emissions, and then scope 3 towards really the whole value chain perspective. And I think in terms of really data gathering and collection, there are several tools out there that can be leaned on. There is a lot of expertise in the market on measuring greenhouse gas emissions right now.
Thank you, Nishant, and I hope, Mr. Vatif, that answers your questions. We have another question from Mr. Gaurav Paul. So, Nishant, Mr. Gaurav Paul wants to know how is Philips addressing the challenge of diminishing raw material when we talk about the environmental sustainability? Is Philips still dependent on virgin prime resources for the manufacturing of the components products, or have moved to some other more sustainable sourcing strategy?
Wow, this is an excellent question. Very good question. I think it hits the core of what we are trying to achieve on circularity, on our circular economy program also. I think so far, the honest answer is also we are still in a transition and we are still in a journey. We have tried to find solutions and materials which can be replaced the existing materials, but at the same time we still use largely virgin materials. And I think that's where also we see ourselves moving through different circular business models. So for example, and a good example is Philips Diamond Select program, wherein we take back the entire CT machine or an MRI machine from the market. We assess which parts of that particular product are still reusable, and then we refurbish it, and then we put it back to a market at a lower cost and at the same quality requirements back. So I think that is already a first step in trying to reduce the amount of materials that you use in your products that you put onto the market. So I think these types of new business models need to be introduced into the market in order to also actively really manage the material flows that we put onto the market. And because sometimes what you often see is OEMs are the best equipped, ones that are best equipped in order to take back the material, but also find it another purpose for that material and reuse it. So I think those are the types of models that Philips has already tested and are also successfully implementing in the within the markets to move towards to transition towards a circular economy. But to long answer short, we still use some virgin materials. So yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Nishant. And I think that answers a lot of other questions that are being asked. And we'd be happy to take the other question towards the end, Nishant. So you would stay towards the end and we'll have a discussion in the end. So thank you so much for your presentation. It's now time to listen to our next speaker, who is ranked one of the leading women in business sustainability by the prestigious WBCSD and was globally recognized as Sustainability Leader of the Year by Ethical Corporation UK. Yes, I'm talking about Ms. Namita Vikas, who is the founder and managing partner at Octus ESG LLP and global board member of Climate Bonds Initiative UK. A senior business leader with 30 years of diverse global experience in climate change strategy and sustainability across sectors, including banking, technology, and FMCG, Namita comes with an illustrious experience in sustainable finance, ESG risk management, climate strategy, and disclosures. Namita has introduced responsible banking to India, raised over $1 billion capital and credit line towards mainstream green finance, and issued India's first green bond in 2015. She is a prominent speaker at UN General Assembly and G20 on climate risk and sustainable finance. So thank you for joining us today, Namita, and we look forward to listening to your views on ESG strategies and geopolitical trends.
Thank you very much, Ms. Suzanne, for the invitation to be here. And thank you very much, Shalini, for inviting me. I believe it is very commendable for ICCE to take up these topics, which are instrumental in accelerating capital flows towards sustainability across businesses globally and, furthering the overall ESG agenda. So as you had requested me, I'm going to focus on evaluating ESG strategies and geopolitical trends from a financial services sector lens. So that's really what I'm going to use here. And it was wonderful to hear to Nishant. Philip is indeed doing a great job as far as sustainability is concerned. So moving on, according to the Global Sustainable Investment Alliance, ESG-oriented investing assets were at about 13.6 trillion US dollars in 2012. What is seen as a stellar growth, and they have almost tripled to 40.5 trillion US dollars by mid 2020. And it is also expected to reach about 53 trillion US dollars by 2022. So this is what research is telling us. That's the movement of ESG-oriented investing that is happening across the world. Amongst these, the lion's share lies within Europe and the US, and in comparison to Japan, Australia, New Zealand, or the Middle East, ESG-oriented assets comprise almost one-third of the total AUMs, that is asset under management in the US, and is estimated to be approximately half of Europe's total AUMs by 2025. So down under, a survey by Responsible Investing Association of Australia found such assets comprised close to two-thirds of the assets in Australia, New Zealand back in 2018. So if we connect the dots between ESG and geopolitics, I think it is an important step given the overall global interconnectedness, regulatory impacts, and the variations of adoption of ESG across the globe. So if you look continent versus continent, I think the traction is at a different level altogether. So for example, the Australian Sustainable Finance Initiative, a private sector-led collaborative of leading banks and funds, launched the Roadmap for Sustainable Finance in 2020, which includes about 37 recommendations for BFSI players to adopt from 2021 to 2030. This roadmap is particularly targeted towards building a resilient economy, given Australia's specific climate-related issues like bushfires, and focuses on a financial system that aligns to meeting the needs of all the Australians now and into the future. It also takes into cognizance the geopolitical balance that is really needed, given the nature of their economy, which is commodities export-led and largely dependent on a huge commodity-intensive market within the Asia, which is their accessibility, right? Now, similarly, if you look at Europe, with the European Green Deal and the influx of climate-conscious leaders in the European Commission. This has all led to policy developments throughout the last decade, only to intensify in 2020. So we have seen, this culminating into regulatory initiatives like the EU's green taxonomy, the sustainable finance disclosure regulations, the corporate sustainability reporting directive. And all of this has, somehow brought about a kind of a sustainable or ESG revolution within Europe and for the financial sector, companies that potentially work also within the European market. So this is not just limited to Europe, but those also who are looking at Europe as a big market. Now, apart from policies, there is also sustainable industry and stakeholder action that is seen across the globe. Very rightly, as my colleague from Philips mentioned, big oil companies are being directed to align. So the Dutch court has ruled that Shell must reduce its emissions by 45% by 2030. Chevron shareholders voting for targets to reduce Scope 3 emissions, and activists, investors getting at least 2 of the climate activist directors elected to the Axion board shows clear signs of the pressures that industry as well as financiers are facing from all over. If I have to focus on circular economy, there is increased traction with European companies like Norway's Tomra, with its pioneering plastic recycling vending machines, or for that matter, Belgium's Recipel, that developed a workable business model around e-waste circularity. Germany's BioLutions, which has developed biodegradable plastic alternatives for food and beverage packaging. And of course, we all know about IKEA's footprint as a pioneer in this space, which is not only leading on product design, but I think it's product design that can be repurposed, repaired, reused, resold, and recycled. Wow, I think that's a lot. And if you look outside of mainland Europe, UK too has made significant advancements when it became the first country globally to mandate all its businesses to adapt TCFD, that is Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, where it is mandating all companies, financial institutions to disclose on climate-related financial risks and opportunities in line with the provided guidelines. We've seen that, in the US with Biden's administration rejoining the Paris Agreement and the recent executive order on reporting, the whole financial game is changing with climate risks across government departments starting off, and that has a rippling effect or a cascading effect, if I may see, from these regions or from these continents to become very dominating as far as ESG investing is concerned. And most of the large institutional investors or long-term patient capital providers like pension funds, superannuation funds, or endowments, which originate from the financial centers of Europe and the US, their portfolio holdings are demanding today ESG to be embedded. We've seen how investors like BlackRock, Amundi, BNP Paribas are making public announcements to integrate ESG and climate action through large commitments. And this all is entailing a demand for capital allocation to projects connected to SDGs and a risk evaluation methodology embedded with ESG and climate risks. So these are many examples I have here, which are also seeing how this whole mainstreaming is happening across the world, and how investors, large buyers, are forcing their providers, factory owners to institute, for example, better health, safety measures, or environment-related emission reductions to improve their entire value chains. The pressures are really growing. And this is especially very important from a geopolitical standpoint for those companies to look at who are either export-oriented focused or wanting to grow their business, or it's a mere survival matter of fact that we are seeing across global markets. So in a way, the global market is uniting to mainstream ESG and sustainable finance. And I believe that it is only a matter of time that there will be a convergence in making economic alliances which are laced with green. So, for example, a green Quad or a green NATO or a green Belt and Road. I think this is only a matter of time. Further, if we take the view of what is happening in the recent times with regard to COVID, and one positive news that came out around this time is the Green Stimulus Index. This index assesses the effectiveness of COVID stimulus efforts by the G20 countries in ensuring an economic recovery that takes advantage of sustainable growth opportunities and builds resilience through the protection of climate and biodiversity. It provides a method to gauge the current impact of COVID responses, to track countries' progress over time, and to identify and recommend measures for improvement of this effectiveness across those responses. Now, the world's leading economies have announced economic stimulus. We all know about it, all these packages, and currently approximately a total of 3.7 trillion US dollars are going directly into sectors that have large and lasting impacts on carbon emissions and nature, namely agriculture, industry, regular industry, small scale, waste, energy, transportation. A compilation of economic stimulus packages announced by 17 leading economies in the immediate aftermath of COVID lockdowns showed at least 1/3 of the announcements were earmarked towards green sectors. So that's good. These flows compare with the total stimulus to date that has been allocated, which is about 12 trillion. But I think what is very important that I'm trying to highlight here is that with the GIS, the index, as a part, this index is a part of the Finance for Biodiversity initiative. It shows that governments to date have largely failed to harness this opportunity, and the announced stimulus to date will only have a net negative environmental impact. And there is data that is available on the countries that they have analyzed. The developed country packages stand out as damaging in many cases. This is as per their survey, while emerging economies most dependent on environmentally intensive sectors and without strong regulatory oversight have the biggest task to turn their stimulus green. So while the pandemic has seen visible green shoots in emerging markets like India, and particularly with the banking or the financial services industry, sustainability and ESG have started to grow. But I think we have to. So there is a cost to the economic development, as we have seen, and there have been COVID impacts. So I think the real discussion is to see how like-minded ESG investors or investors come together to be able to create that alpha, not only from their own higher risk-adjusted returns, but also from an environmental or a social standpoint, right? So during the pandemic, what was seen was most of the ESG investors in India were stressing on the S part of the ESG. So amongst the investor community, there were questions about jobs, pay cuts, retention of workforces, furloughs, childcare, health benefits to employees, support to women. These have become mainstream discourses since the lockdowns began, and the investors started understanding more and more that these are the impacts that are adversely hitting employees, employers, and communities. So the criteria seem to be moving, especially if you look at the Indian markets. And since I saw that there are many participants from India, I think one of the good developments here in this country, and linking back to what our colleague from Philips was mentioning about disclosures, I think the SEBI's recent announcement on ESG disclosures in form of the business responsibility and sustainability reporting will certainly add pressure or bring in a kind of a formal integration of sustainability. Because if a company needs to disclose, then it needs to also take certain targets and then manage the entire target as well as measure and report, right? So uniform and detailed disclosures through this particular mechanism of BRSR will also help investors pick the leaders from the laggards as far as the ESG conduct of Indian corporates are concerned, coupled with the growing demands for sustainability from, again, other regions like US and Europe. And I'm again bringing in the geopolitics angle here. This may also help determine how Indian companies who have trade, business, and investment dependencies with ESG leading regions end up. Do they end up as winners? Is there, in terms of business growth, Are there any geopolitical implications that need to be looked at? And what are internal strategy tweaks or interventions that need to be done on behalf of companies? So, circular economy being an extremely big opportunity out there, how do companies respond to the materiality or the material ESG risks and opportunities, and how these are mitigated or adapted to? I think that is very important. Another very important aspect is the financial aspect that is there today, right? I mean, all sustainability initiatives or all ESG initiatives need finance, and how companies look at financing these initiatives, and whether the financial services sector is ready to channelize the capital into these directions. I think that is very, very critical to be taken into account from a finance of the future standpoint, really. And here, one very last example I would like to take is of the energy sector. The global energy trade is closely connected to geopolitical moves, creating alliances with US, Saudi Arabia, despite their ideological differences or the challenges between, I mean, we've seen as far as the Russian gas supplies to Romania or the Balkans, in spite of the, Russia-Ukraine clashes, or the food for oil swaps by Venezuela with Mexico, Spain, Italy, and India following its economic ooze. I think renewable energy is the emerging connector with geopolitical moves, apart from the conventional demands and the supply of oil and gas. So population growth, economic development, energy poverty means electricity demand will certainly continue to remain high in developing countries. We've seen that the actual share of wind and solar energy in the entire energy production mix is still very low, and most part of this is towards utility scale solar or utility scale renewable energy projects. However, the decline in the renewable energy equipment costs, along with innovative financing models like pay as you go, as we've seen in Kenya or other African markets, these are now providing tailwinds for transforming energy access in some of the world's least developed countries, and creating a case to connect ESG and geopolitics in the context of renewable energy. So there are many such examples. I mean, one can take India as, investing in sustainable energy becomes a highly profitable as well as economical as well as environmental positive impact kind of perspective. And these are the kind of these are the areas that need more and more financing and more and more of these geopolitical integration, as I would say. Just one last point towards this. There are many financial instruments, and this is something that I wanted to bring to the table. The traditional lens of finance towards climate sectors or towards sustainable sectors is equity, debt investing. But I think, blended finance, green bonds, outcome-based impact bonds, credit enhancements, guarantees, technical grants, I think these are some of the alternative financial instruments that can create the momentum in the market, thus accelerating and boosting the entire drive towards this whole action towards 2030 and net zero. So I will stop here, and I'm happy to take any questions that may be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Navda, for those insightful words. And it was an honor to listen to your views and your perspective on the topic. And now we have certain questions from the audience. So the first question is by Dr. Kiran. Dr. Kiran wants to know, why is India still lagging behind in sustainable packaging issue when compared to other businesses globally?
Thanks. See, I think, as far as India is concerned, I will say that India in pockets has done good work as far as sustainability is concerned. As far as, the manufacturing sector or maybe the packaging sector is concerned, see, when we conventionally look at sustainability, it has to be a business case. And until you do not get the prices down, so, sustainability is perceived to be either expensive or free, right? I mean, it's either funded by philanthropists or funded through grants, or it's very expensive, right? So if I take the example of the banking sector, in the banking sector, when a green bond was issued, it was a competitive product that was issued into the market, which paid the kind of interest rate that was as per market standard, and it had green elements to it, making it a business case. So in the packaging industry, I mean, I'm not an expert on the packaging industry, but from my view, I think we have to create those economies of scale. So today in renewable energy, exactly what I said, right? Because the prices of renewable energy equipment has come down, it is becoming affordable. So the affordability factor, I think, is very important here, and it is not because if it is just because it's sustainable. Even if you were to do business as usual, the affordability factor, I mean, we in India are an extremely price sensitive market, right? So we look at the cost of everything of doing business. So I think it's linked more inherently to that, and that takes me back to the purpose with which an organization operates. So for there are certain companies which are driven by sustainability as a purpose, and therefore they don't they overlook the short term cost and concentrate more on the long term gains. And I think that is a perspective we need to evolve.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Namita, and I hope, Dr. Kiran, that answers your question. We have another question from Ms. Akshita Binder. She says it's very interesting to know how product design can be of importance to climate change. One of the risks to climate is the plastic and the small little cut-offs of milk, plastic packaging of chips, and other similar products. So, in your opinion, is there a way that this can be brought into the circular economy in reference to product design?
Okay. So, see, we have seen a huge amount of movement as far as plastics are concerned, globally as well as in India, right? I think just a couple of years back, we had on the World Environment Day, India had taken this whole plastic free pledge. Now, again, my question is, what is the alternative for India to plastic? So in case of circularity, I mean, we've seen products which there are products which are alternative to plastic, but are they comparable in terms of cost? So it again boils down to the cost part of it. Now there's another perspective that I will bring in from a financier's lens, right? If there is a plastic producer, accessing capital, may it be capex or opex capital, is very easy because plastic is a traditional business, and therefore the risks are very well understood within these traditional businesses, right? But if there is an alternative, I mean, I saw these days to your there are reusable tissue kitchen tissue rolls that are there, reusable, right? Now, for these kind of businesses to grow to the volumes of a plastic industry, or to grow to a volume of more conventional industry, it takes time. Therefore, the cost to that company in terms of the finance is always more expensive than a cost of finance to a conventional industry. And I think that serves as the biggest hindrance for them to bring down the cost. So if you look at the balance sheet of these companies, they are not able to, if there is lack of volumes, or if there is lack of costs which are competitive, I think that serves as a bigger or a larger problem. So we in India, I think there are several movements. I mean, we've seen how the whole automobile industry. We've seen the example of how circularity has been brought in by converting a cab rather than buying vehicles, a service like Ola or Uber that has come out, right? That is a big disruption that has been brought to the automobile industry, where today we don't have to buy cars. So the car production, actually it's not gone down, but at least you have a service that is available. So I think in circular economy, one is to look at the reduction, reuse, and recycling. But I think very importantly, we have to really come with disruptive innovations which will challenge the normal in itself. And I think that is how I would look at this whole space.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Namita. We have another question from Mr. Sanjay Chauhan. He says, is ESG applicable for clothing brands, or is it being implemented?
Oh yes, very much, absolutely. Sustainability. So there is one of the leader based out of Netherlands, Pantogenia, which is the leader in sustainability. But yes, I mean, there is sustainable clothing that is being made worldwide. not so much in developing markets like India or Asia for that matter, but there is a recognition and there is a trend of recyclable material from a clothing standpoint. So there is a huge market. I can share a link of some of there are a couple of very interesting studies on how sustainability has been embedded into clothing, and how it has been, the processes have been simplified. So I'm sure that you are aware about that, to make one pair of jeans, there is a huge amount of water that is consumed to dye those, right? So there are better processes that are being used in the clothing industry to simplify and to bring the water footprint down, for that matter, or to create carbon neutral manufacturing, if I may say. So there are examples I can share. I can share some with you.
Sure, Ms. Namita, we would be happy if you could share the link in the chat box because the audience wants the link. So we'll take one more question. So Ms. Akshita, again, she says, as we discuss, ESG investors are increasingly looking to non-financial factors as part of their analysis process to identify material risk and growth opportunities. So in regard to this, is it necessary to consider the index or the item-wise correlation?
I don't know if I understood the question right, but see, there
Uh,
are ESG investors who are doing their own analysis, and then they are looking at certain indices like S&P or Fitch in terms of, or there are specialized agencies which are providing ESG ratings of companies. So it is at one level, asset managers do their own ESG analysis. At another level, they also use parameters. So see what is happening today, which is different from maybe what was happening 5 years back, is today mainstream investors who at that for 3 years back were not really looking at ESG risks as a part of their portfolio risk analysis are today also looking at ESG risks as a part of their portfolio analysis. So if there is a asset manager or if there is a bank that is investing into any company, it would do a regular credit analysis, it will do a market risk analysis, it will do a liquidity risk analysis. Today, they're also doing ESG risk analysis. So they're looking at what is the carbon footprint of this particular investment that or the company that is. Do they have mitigants in place for, say, water, for their carbon emissions, so on and so forth. On the social parameters, there are multiple things that are looked at, and on the governance aspect, there are parameters that are looked at. So what has happened, what has changed today is mainstream investors. So earlier there were particularly those investors that only looked at green financing. But today, mainstream investors, and this is also on the back of a movement that was led by BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset manager, to say that they will look at ESG. So the ship took the course, because it was the financial community that it said that it will look at ESG as a part of its risk analysis. So that is what is happening. As far as indices are concerned, the role of the indices are on the basis of disclosures that are made by companies. Indices pick up that data and give out scores. And there is, of course, this huge debate, and there's no time here now, but there's this huge debate about multiple ratings. That there was this whole controversy about Tesla about a month back, where 3 rating agencies gave different ratings to Teslas, which created a big hue and cry in the market. And that was because everybody uses different parameters, different kind of frameworks to be able to come out with this. So that's a huge debate, which is for another time. But yeah, that's where the market is right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Namita, for joining us today. And it was an absolute privilege to listen to your words. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much.
I'll move on to the next speaker now, Mr. Nakul Sadhana, the founder, CEO of Azyro Infratech, a leading next-gen sustainability advisory and technology company. Mr. Nakul is an acclaimed expert in sustainability advisory, ESG practices, waste to energy, integrated and decentralized solid waste management, He has been associated with McKinsey and Company as a subject matter expert. He is a member in the Board of Advisors, IID, Ministry of MSME, jury member in Women Innovator, and also an influencer in the International Council for Circular Economy. He's on a mission to build closed loop businesses that give back to the planet with a data directed insights through qualitative and quantitative approach. Today, Nakul will be talking about the cost and benefits of ESG. Without wasting any more time, I would like to hand over the mic to Nakul. So,
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Shalini, and again, Susanna, for such a wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure to share the e-ice with Amita ma'am, Nishant, and Dr. Ahmed. It has been a very insightful discussion so far. I'll be trying to bring up something from the very base, as in terms of implementation. We talk about that. We have been talking about ESG for the audience who is here, and how to implement, how to start this journey, what it takes you, and what you get in return. Allow me to share my screen. I'll be doing it through a presentation. Let me.
sure, so you can now share screen. Yes. Yes, we are in the slideshow.
Thank you, Susanna. So here we begin, ESG costs and benefits. I'll even include the basic of it, like implementation part, the way it begins the whole journey. Uh, how do you invest in ESG? What really it takes you to invest in, and how do you set your goals and achieve the targets? So it primarily begins with first you evaluate. Be a whatever kind of a business you are, you need that basic level of sustainability piece to be in place. So this starts with evaluation of your current practices, aspects of sustainability, carbon footprint assessment, your societal impact, your responsibility towards your workforce, manpower, and then what next? It's about the measurement. You measure. You put give that a number particularly. So ESG, when I got into it, it was a I even thought of like this could be something very new, but interestingly for everyone out here, it is the same thing which we repeat in everyday life. It's a number where we have given a quantitative definition to a qualitative standards currently. We have defined them. I mean, it's a game of more of a meaningful data. We are providing a particular data or a number to an indicator. So that's why we call it measure what you are doing. It can be either could be a Boolean data like a yes or no, but beyond that it could be definitely a number. And then you adopt those practices which help you to improve in that direction, and then you create a framework for your long-term goals. So what are your goals and how do you reach to them? Is the first principle is circular economy. Different principles of circular economy, which consist of maybe reduce water intake, proper waste management, proper wastewater management, giving back to nature, again, using more on focusing on the recycling, reusing, not to go back to the nature for the virgin raw materials. Second thing, what it brings to a compliance management. We live in India, we know how our legal system and law looks like. And we see that there are a lot of different lawsuits which we face, and it takes a lot of time. And we have even seen that these kind of non-compliance mismanagement even keeps the fate of the company on toss for a longer run. And then what is the next goal? It's your people, it's your team, it's your employees which set the show for you. So their happiness really matters a lot. So that's the third thing which can be kept in mind. And the fourth thing, which is very important, we live in a world of innovation, and we keep on innovating on the front of the product. We keep defining our services in a new way. We keep reframing them. And finally, while you're doing the business, so you definitely need to think of profitability. So that has to be there in mind. As Namita rightly said, that sustainability comes with a cost. So that cost has to get translated in a manner that where it starts making a business sense as well. So the next thing I'll take up here is how how exactly does a strong ESG proposition makes a business sense? Uh, so it's a primarily a trade-off between the necessary expenditure you do when you set up an ESG implementation strategy back in your office, and the potential losses which would occur by the mismanagement or because of the absence of any ESG strategy or the policies. So the other word, as I mentioned here, like in the presentation, it can be asked like, can your company afford not to have a ESG strategy in place or ESG framework not to be in place? So, so to answer that, like we need to understand how ESG links to cash flows, how it really benefits from where this profitability journey starts from. So it facilitates the top line growth. I'll explain that in much detail in the next slide. Uh, it reduces your cost of, let's say, waste management, intake water cost. A lot of, you spend a lot of money in the compliances part. If you go for a lawsuit, then it's any additional cost. Similarly, it minimizes the regulatory and legal interventions. It doesn't keep the business on hold. It is, and it keeps even the morale high. If you are legally sound, you really feel mentally fit. And at the same time, when you take care of your employees, your workforce really well, that increases the productivity, and it's a directly proportional indicator. And finally, you really need to know that you optimize your investment and capital expenditure as well. How do we do it? Does it really make more sense? We'll see it here. We were discussing about the top line growth. Uh, so there are two propositions. I mean, a strong ESG proposition and the weak. So I'll be talking about the positive side of it. How the strong proposition make a lot of sense down the line when you implement ESG, and you have spent some budget there. It's you invent through the innovation, you invent new sustainable products. Those sustainable products catch a lot of eye. We live in a world where social media is playing a very vital role. So keeping your product in those kind of racks where public and the people are able to see it easily. So you are able to catch up a market, be it B2B or B2C. B2C has a larger advantage. B2B takes its own sweet time. That's even can be called as a like it grows organically, but definitely you attract a larger footprint than of the non-sustainable products having in your rec. And at the same time, you are able to connect to the community because you're talking about community. You're talking about their improvement. You are making government. You're following government norms, so nobody is coming and questioning you. You're not just part of the lawsuits or the legal issues. Entity is not bothering you. Cost reduction. How do I do it? We are spending lesser on, let's suppose, the water consumption, lower energy consumption. We are using new products which can save energy, which can bring a more innovative way to address your waste. It could be wastewater, solid waste, and you're saving down the line. And at the same time, this even in interest at the same time to the investors that what you're doing in that energy space. We talk a lot about energy. So that way, I mean, you save a lot of costs in terms of energy consumption and optimized waste management, I'll call it overall. Regulatory and legal interventions, it brings a like a greater strategic freedom all throughout. As I said, I mean, you are mentally sound. You earn subsidies to the government. You can participate in as many as tender you want. Nobody is stopping you to do to go for a big deeds. It even impacts, like as I mentioned, on the productivity uplift of the employees. Overall, it boosts motivation. At the same time, your employee is happy, and we where we stand as on in terms of happiness index. So who are these? These are our people. This indexing is being done by some agency based on what the happiness of the overall country, and we know where we stand as on today. So we really need that kind of uplift of the happiness, which can be done when we take care of their interests well. And it even attracts a global talent to work in our country or a specific region. And in the last, which really matters a lot, investment. That cash your company needs to let the show go on. Enhance investment returns by better allocating capitals for the long term. And interestingly, the last point is very important to note, that avoid those kind of investment which may not pay off in you later in a long term. You invested into something which you plan for a short term goal, or which you thought of that it would be a beneficial deal, but while you have a clear-cut sustainability indicator, ESG indicators in place, and which gives a negative signal to you, you might just let off that investment go and don't participate in any such kind of a business deal or expansion plan. So the benefits, as a primarily we have been discussing, it improves companies' financial, the top line, stock liquidity that we have been seeing all across. Even India has now 4 ESG compliant mutual funds. ESG investor are sticky; they stick to you for long term. They know that you are doing well in space. You safeguard investors' interest. You have those kind of policies in place, which are just not working on the bottom line. You are even working parallelly to consolidate and uplift your top line as well. It unlocks the competitive value in terms of the innovation you bring in your product, and the competitive edge you bring in your services. And a proactive stance on ESG issues can keep it those activists on a bay in terms of that you being saved from a lot of I won't call it a nuisance, but a lot of a daily it's a business the adharma or dharma kind of a story I see. And it saves you, it puts you on hold to invest your energy into something negative. Now we'll try to understand how to implement. What is the cost issue? We see that we are in a time of pandemic. India has becoming a country like where a lot of startups are coming up, and some of them are in a very nascent stage. Some of them are in phase 2 in the growing stage, and especially in such a tough time where everybody is looking for funds for their expansion plan or for their employee welfare. So how to create that basic strategy to implement ESG? So for the stakeholders, primarily the board or the CEOs, the higher level management, they really need to understand what their business is and how it creates that impact on the world or their surroundings. When I say world, it's your own world around you. If let's suppose you are in a manufacturing business, so you really need to know that kind of a product you are using, that suppliers backward integration. I mean, how your suppliers are manufacturing your basic things, from where you're getting the machines, what is your water intake, how you're managing your waste. So that you really need to see and put that into a terms of a data. Now, whatever the terms I've used, that has to get translated in terms of the data. That's where your first puzzle gets solved. Once you start giving that numbers to your qualitative indicators, and you start treating them as a quantitative indicators, you're through, like you're 50% through. Now the second thing is you ensure transparency around ESG practices. If you have that practice, make sure that you disclose what you're doing. Better disclosures makes a better ESG practices across different businesses. If you are open for your disclosure, then you really get to know, you are able to compare from a different peers across the peers. And even you go in different sectors, you identify that this could have been improved looking at their disclosures. So disclosures and possible fair practices puts you in the right place to evaluate your current position. Third, prioritize ESG issues that need to be addressed. It could be related to your manpower, it could be a board issue, it could be anything on the side of the governance. And the fourth is concentrating on the impact of ESG, which is bringing the impact ESG is creating on your overall company, and do market around it. Do talk about it, the positivities it's bringing to your company or ecosystem or the institution you represent. Now we'll just quickly see a case study. It has been done by the ESG of Investments based out of New York. It's a portfolio company. It's a chemical company which is primarily a leading supplier for specialty chemical based on renewable raw materials. So this kind of raw materials are primarily used for the personal care, life sciences, performance technology, and another industrial uses are there. It's a industry leading. There are industry leading position in the sustainability space. The 2/3 of the company's raw material comes from the natural resources, and 94% of the company's sustainable products which are there in the market are the 94% well sustainable, and expected to be the top 50 seller over the next 5 years. So how do the innovation they have incorporated in their business model? They continuously keep on innovating, and they keep on preventing it and protecting it by the network of patents. Has been able to establish the leading position in terms of both relative margins and the returns. Closer customer relationship and a stronger pricing power has again enabled company to, in comparison to their peer in the chemical sector. Company A opened in-house bio-based ethylene oxide (EO) plant in 2017 back in US, and these surfactants are primarily, they are not using through a petrochemical refined bioethylene oxide. It has been a bio-based, something which is could be recyclable, something which is being taken again from the reusable sources. It's not the, through the crude oil. So it primarily replacing the 21 kilotons of synthetic EO capacity. How does it impact the overall putting up such kind of a plant in place and having sustainable practices? We see that from 2018 to 17, there is a 75% of the jump in in the overall revenue source. Capture more than a value chain surface and enable the company to change the premium as consumers are willing to pay more for the sustainable product. So there they play with the pricing strategy. While they're introducing more sustainable products in market, they're even asking for the higher price of it, and consumers are paying for it. This definitely increases their revenue, their profitability, overall sales, and we even see that having such kind of a bio-based ethylene oxide factory in place, it even reduces their operational cost over a period of time. If you see that in the graph, I'm leaving this screen for a while to all of you to see that by yourself. And it even product need to manage the logistics of hazardous materials such as petrochemical ethylene. So the intent here to showcase this graph is that just not the revenue side, it is even affecting on the day-to-day cost, which is being, which is occurring at the side of logistics, preparation of the basic material, then refining it and getting the final product. These are the, some EBIT lift and uplift in the introduction of sustainable source for the ethylene oxide. I won't name them one by one, but we get to see that it has been able to, give that what they really expected from it in terms of volume, pricing, incremental organic growth, revenues, and even the profit. Company A has given a long-term return to the people, 4% plus organic growth rate to their customers, and a discounted cash flow model implies an upside of 14% with a value of particular value per share based on the weighted average cost of capital of 6.2%. So this is available on internet. This is not, I'm not talking anything new, but you can go across many policies. So the heart of any ESG implementation is that you strengthen your product by a sustainable model. You bring more those kind of services which are long term, and you even keep that in mind that your people, your social side should be really happy, and at the same time you have a close check on the top management, the board level policy. And the last, I'll try to put some indicators, some key themes which we really define while taking care of the ESG. So another study here, we see ESG score related to companies' cost of emerging market and as well as the developed market. So I'll quickly, try to explain what it really means. I hope my screen is visible still. And so this is a study which aims to understand the correlation between companies' ESG profile with the cost of company. Monthly industry adjusted ESG scores are tried to obtain. Study period was from 2015 to 19. The basis of the companies was taken from the MSCI World Index Developed Market Constituents and MSCI Emerging Market Constituents. That these two parts of, like, the emerging market could be developing nation or the developed region like US, Europe, Japan. So the findings from the emerging market comes risks that affect the broad equity market or the market like sectors or the industries, then low ESG rated companies. So this finding consistent with the capital asset pricing model. This is CAPM, where the low systematic risk implies lower cost of equity. And at the same time, the second finding which majorly comes that the average cost of debt of high ESG rated company was lower than the low ESG rated companies. This is very much in line to the a corporate governance side standard we think of. One of the pillar of ESG is known to reduce the firm's default risk. So the debt line, it has been safeguarded with higher ESG standards. For the developed regions, what we see from the graph is The relationship between ESG score and the cost of the capital was the strongest in US, where the lowest ESG score companies face significantly higher cost of the capital. So where the ESG scores are low, they are facing higher capital risk. And in Europe and Japan, the relationship was not entirely consistent, although the cost of capital and low-rated companies have remained significantly higher than on the best-rated ones. Across all regions, ESG score bore a higher strong relationship with the cost of capital for low-rated companies, as shown in the sharp increase from the quintiles and Q3 and the Q1 ESG scores. So this very much comes from my end. I'll stop. Thank you everyone for your time. I hope I tried to explain that from the very basic, that what really needs to for ESG implementation, what kind of a cost it might occur at your end to implement ESG. It could be a small startup or a mid-size MSME, and what benefit it brings up with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nakul, for beautifully explaining it to us, the financial sense of an ESG proposition. And I'm sure the audience came to learn a lot about the costs and benefits of ESG. Nakul, we have a very important question from one of the attendees, who is Mr. Priyank Patel, and he says, how to implement ESG in small companies? So if you would like to answer that.
Yeah. So thank you for the question. It's very important. I see as the focus again is, especially in the developed region, is going again towards the MSME. Nobody wants to see the data of the established firm. Everybody is looking to have data from the MSME side. And again, we will even see the sharp change in Indian market. So it becomes important for smaller companies to keep that eye on it, that how can we implement it. So the basic, it starts with that you start evaluating where you stand. What the impact kind of services and offerings you have. It could be that you might get into an unnecessary deal where you don't even have the environmental interface. Every company will have a government and social interface, but not necessarily that every company will have a larger environmental interface. Like consulting firms, they have a very low environmental interface. It could be just e-waste which they generate through the laptops or the travel which they make, right? So we need to define where we stand, the kind of a sector we serve in. We need to evaluate. Once we know that what kind of services we have, we need to identify then what are the standards we are using. If you remember that what Namita was saying now, it has created a confusion, different rating agencies, different frameworks. We need to might just follow one, not all of them, right? It could be any GRS standards, SASB. So you can take up one particular framework and start exercising on that. The basic lies in when you start having data. See, the bigger firms has data because they publish their annual report. So their annual report, around 2,000 more financial data points has been well defined. Could be from since last 100 years or 20 years, depending on the life of the company. So that financial audit market has been there since long. I really don't know the age of that market. But the sustainable market has recently come. So we are not well aware of the data indicators, what we really need to know on. So like, let's suppose on the product responsibility side, right? It could be a part of, we put it in a governance side, in the social sector. What is the product quality, privacy and integrity, product access, responsible market, controversial product. So these are basic, some key themes of the data indicator, which has to be defined. So a small company really need to know all these data indicators first. So have those indicators based on define the business first, then start collecting the indicators which are inconcurrent to you. You can use any particular framework. You'll get these data indicators there, and then start putting the numbers there. Once you have those three things, you are 75% through. Now you really need to improve that. You need to put that into a score. But even if you have that, your basic mind allows you to implementing it, right? You know that this is not the correct data. This is not something where we are lacking. You would get to know, looking at your waste management or energy consumption, and then start innovating on the other side. That can solar be used, or can we put some sensor-based kind of electrical system, so where the moment we stop using the equipment, it goes down. So that way, I would put measure, evaluate, measure, innovate, and strategize.
Right. Right. Thank you so much, Nakul. And we have a lot of more questions coming up, but then we'll take those towards the end when we have an open discussion with the speakers. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
Uh, I'll now move on to our last speaker of today, Dr. Ahmed Al Hasbi. Dr. Ahmed is a vitally experienced environment professional with over 30 years of experience in both public and private sectors and having a PhD in environmental science. Prior to establishing Al Madad Group, Dr. Al Hazmi served as Executive General Manager for the Saudi Basic Industries Corporation, SABIC, and was responsible for managing the environmental affairs at corporate and affiliate level across global and Saudi operations. In the kingdom, Dr. Hazmi is widely consulted with by government agencies on policy and regulations. He represented SABIC for many years in the International Chemicals Council Association in chemical policy and climate change leadership groups. Throughout his practice, he has developed more than 100 published and unpublished scientific articles, presentations, and studies covering environment and sustainability subjects. Dr. Ahmed today will present on the ESG strategies and geopolitical trends in the Gulf countries. We welcome you to present now, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Susanna, for this introduction. Also, I would like to thank Shalini ICA for organizing this very nice workshop. Actually, my colleagues, they are covering the ESG implementation, some case studies, some international. I will just to focus on the Gulf situation, evaluation the ESG in the Gulf countries. My presentation will cover three key questions. One, what is the strategy and policy in the Gulf related to ESG? The second part, how its implementation today. And as we made observation, what is the key observation for the current ESG reporting? After that, we will also share with you the roadmap for implementations. Next, please. If we are looking for the Gulf countries for the implementations, let us start with the makes sense. Today, our Gulf countries, they are happy to have more investors from different world, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, or we are waiting, and the ESG will support us. And I will share with you what the investor looking for. This is a very, very important. This is the important issue. The second, the business society today is concerned about the impact on the human and the planet. Today, you cannot make your business away from what is the impact, climate change or waste, etc. issues. Another point also, the ESG data is a set standard used to measure your company's sustainability. Again, you can see how ESG data of screening for potential investment. Any investors will come, how you are dealing with the CSR issues. That definitely ESG should cover that issue. Investors also are based on these criteria. What is the environment, company performance, stewardship, natural, its of use, sustainable. This is one the key things. Any litigation, any buoyance, any contaminated area, because it is risk. Usually the investor work where is to avoid the risk. This is the key things in his mind before to make any investment in any business, either in the Gulf or in India or wherever. This is the top risk, how it will be avoided. The second, the investors also, the company management of people and resources. This is, you cannot say it by a list-wise some scoring system, by numbers you like it. The governance, I mean, how governance, how the value ethics, the ethics of the board. But I think these things with ESG will be. The second, if I conclude in this investor, look to three things. One, your strategic approach, long-term your strategic approach, and that will be clearly described in the report that you will issue. The second, what is the material issues? This is a very important. ESG report is different from one business to another. If you are in chemical, different than you are in an agriculture company, than they are IT company. And each business, they have top risk issues. Here, the business guy would like to see it, and the report of sustainability or ESG will highlight it. The last point of that, share values, because today we have seen many scandals, many problems globally. Then when you share the value of your business in that report, that will becoming more attractive. Having said that about the importance of ESG in the business and investing, let us give you now just screening the strategy and policy in the Gulf. This is a very important. This is the top important issue. Let us start with the Saudi Arabia, how ESG. For your sharing that, the public investment fund incorporate ESG principle into global investment. This is a this is clearly high commitment with the top guy in the business. He said any business will have in Saudi Arabia, ESG in the principle should be included, should be considered, and should be reviewed. ESG in investing growing in line with the sustainable development goal. I fully support that statement by the top guy, because it is hand to hand with the SDGs. And most of the GCC countries now, they have vision for 2030, starting from Saudi Arabia, they have 2030, Oman, Kuwait, and this ESG investing go hands to hands with that Saudi and that Gulf regions. Just example, in November 2020, BIF increased its stake in the renewable energy sector to 50%, part of the move to support the sustainability. This is very strong commitment and implementation. This is now finished Saudi Arabia. That's been the top guy in investment. They said ESG is one need to be considered. Next, let us go to another case in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia Tadawul Exchange. This is Tadawul. This is I like to quote exactly his statement. He said exactly, while the market cap of exchange dominated by energy companies, 78% at the end of 19. These are primary mega cap names, the most exchange. And after that, he also speak other businesses like banks, like telecom and material. And this is clearly a statement. We understand ESG is becoming an investment requirement, and we don't want to be behind. This is in the Saudi market. This is a very strong commitment from the second guy also in the Tadawul. And the message to any business people, either local companies, petrochemical companies, cement companies, banks, all that people in business should fully adopt that statement and put it in their mandates or in their program. Next, please. Let us move to Emirates. Emirates, very simple. DAF السوق المالي اللي في Dubai launched Index for Environmental Social Governance earlier in April 2020 to encourage listed company to expand embracing ESG best practices, which highlighting how UAE prioritize ESG practices. Abu Dhabi offices has launched a new policy to maximize the environmental social governance benefit of its incentive to public-private. This is again the second commitment from another firm in Emirates. And Emirates, like Saudi Arabia, they're also looking for investors coming from outsider. Those people to see how the people running their business in environmental manners and how the people dealing with social and governance issues. This another commitment from that. Next, please. We have this case study going in details about this in detail. But also, if I go to the second point, a survey conducted by CFA Institute, the future of sustainability investment management from IDIT Reality, 90% of the retail investors in A are either already investing in sustainability or plan to invest. This is give you a very strong management. The top guys or more, I mean, the majority of the investors like to see that either people already implemented or they have a plan. And this will give you something important. That's meaning today, we are lucky today, all the key leaders, CEOs of the business are fully aware the importance of ESG to be about their business. Next, please. If you go to Qatar, is three examples. Why I bring more examples to share with you the policy and strategic approach in the Gulf countries about ESG. And this is the top guys. If the people said committed, that's meaning after that only the businesses, bank, company need to adopt. And this is the top guy. Look to the ESG in Qatar. In Qatar, when the people introduced that before 3 years, The people also, not only the people, help the people to make reporting style, people help them to make a regulation, people help them how listed company to start. Each company in the Gulf, they have a listed company for the stock market, and this is the fair requirement will be. Of course, we will share with you other example. If you go to also in Qatar itself, in 2018, launched the first sustainability platform in region to encourage, of course, in the beginning to encourage, to urge, but after that will be comparing with the peers, and that you are AAA or you are C or B. This another case. Next, please. Just to share with you the template, this is developed by Qatar. This is not should be cascade for everybody to use, but I will bring it here for one message. Most of you guys today are aware about sustainability, and you are covering environment and social. The governors are not well covered in you. And I like to make one important point here. Many people try to confuse between sustainability and ESG. This gives you the KPIs for each one, tell you exactly where the missing KPIs you have already today. Most of ours covering some issues, KPIs in environmental, some social, but governance is the lowest KPIs reporting in the current report. And this template is applicable to X company, but it doesn't mean applicable to Y. That's why you need who will develop with you the ESG to understand your situation, your materiality, your top issues, and they, after that, give you the framework and structure of the report that applicable to your business. Next, please. ESG in Bahrain. In Bahrain, also the same exercise in the Bahrain. They issue a reporting guide to encourage all the assist company, around 9 companies they have until today. But again, this is to enhance the transparency and disclosure in Bahrain capital market. The same trend in Bahrain, the same in Oman, the people until 2030, all the people should achieve their 2030. Next. This is very important point. This is from the Borsa. Borsa means the stock market here, but this is an Arabic word. Borsa means stock market. Here in Bahrain, we are seeing in government support towards a reallocation of fund toward the ESG market. And this is the COO of Mumtalakat al-Holding Company, means implementation already started in a few companies in the Gulf. And in next slide, I will share you with other examples. Now, we having said that the policies now in the Gulf, all the top financial institution, the people should commit. Let us take another part, how the implementation today. Number one, there is still confusion between ESG and sustainability. You should know in the Gulf, sustainability introduced before 10 years. That's why you have seen all the reports are very nice. Most of the companies reporting sustainability and will report very good KPIs, very good performance. Even most of the performance are operational performance, but are very good. For most of the companies, they have their own sustainability report. The people, as I mentioned here, the sustainability have two mention. One is the performance, and the second is building trust with public. But if you go to ESG, no, they are beyond than that. They have material issues, the value share, the long-term approach. But this is the key difference between sustainability and the ESG. The second point also from our implementation, awareness is still very low about ESG. And if you make survey, how many people fully aware what ESG means, how to be implemented, is still, you will have big number, very low number of people fully aware. Of course, the only big players, companies understand, but the small and medium size, they are not in the picture in any way. The third point, very few ESG reports have been issued from the Gulf countries. We reviewed in our office here how many reports issued in the Gulf, and I will next slide to show our observation of the current. Even there are few reports, even although few reports, but also we have some comments, and we will share it you later on. But it's still very few, and I'm not surprising because ESG in the Gulf 3 years, or between 2 to 3 years, you have seen all the commitment. Whereas sustainability 10 years back, I think it is. I'm not surprising from the conclusion we reached to. And number 3, some of these reports are not to the level ESG requirements. Absolutely, when we have the standard of ESG report, and we will measure that. Of course, most of that report not reach that level that we need about the ESG from the disclosures and commitment. And another point, focus is mostly on operation KPIs. Corporate governance is missing, absolutely, because the people think only 3 KPIs, energy intensity, waste, recycling, 3 KPIs that will enough. Absolutely, governance is missing in most of the reports that we have reviewed. Selection of KPI is not purposely designed. This is a very important point. If you need a good report reflecting your activities, you need to do good homework. And homework, I think I agree with Mr. Nakul before when he said you need to make digging information to understand where you are, what you need to achieve. But if you are selecting some KPIs does not reflect your business, of course you can reflect you are in a better shape, but this does not mean you are okay in your business. Next, please. Now let us give you a summary from what we have seen today. ESG is a major pillar of public policy and strategic planning for government, and on the global platform is a part of the United Nations Sustainable Goal. This is a very important vision, and we have seen our colleagues, we have seen the children, and also we have the top guys who committed for that business. ESG analysis complement traditional financial analysis and investment due diligence. The result of ESG assessment is part of the overall. I don't know how many people of you are aware about due diligence for the companies. When we are conducting due diligence, we have 3 key areas. One, the performance for the risk, including ESG, environmental health, safety, and after that we go to marketing, then we go to operation. This should be a part of the due diligence exercise that will need to be conducted. Capital market engagement shows a high interest in the level of ESG, and I'm sure I shared with you our people direction in the Gulf, all the people committed, the people need ESG, and the people give a clear statement that it is about of their business, and really we appreciate that high awareness. Managers are now looking for ways to integrate environmental, social governance data into their investment approach to better manage the risk and funding opportunities in a changing world. I think I have seen some people trying to do this, how to merging ESG along with their agenda. The most challenging task is how companies can push themselves to think beyond ESG as a risk management tool and deploy it to create truly sustainable. This is really key challenge here. The question here they need from the ECOs themselves, how people to think beyond the ESG risk and how to push themselves to adopt it. And this is really this challenge need to be handled and be solved by top guy in the company, ESG level or deputy of ESG. It is noticeable that ESG disclosure is very low in some firms. I have seen some of that report is, to be honest, it doesn't give a good disclosures. And this is important when you are developing ESG report, it should be balancing, but when what you have achieved, what the challenges you are facing, and where areas where you promised to improve the situation. Go down. Although ESG has proven its worth, much remains to be done to ensure we use it in the full potential. Yes, I think they needed to tailor ESG in action plan, activities, program, and objective. Next, please. This is my recommendation from what we have seen in the Gulf, the commitment here, the observation, what we have seen. I think this is a roadmap those people like to take it away to their company and to start developing ESG. One commitment from the financial firm are in place, and you are lucky your financial institution already confirmed and have it. And also, it will not be strange if you tell your management it is already in the business. Investors should adopt that. The second point, if you are take a leadership or if you are champion of ESG, between brackets, you are champion of the, you need to conduct a workshop extensively to different levels of your company. Try to bring benefits for that and try to share with your company the peers what they are doing. That two things will help them to understand. Unfortunately, from our interview, some people, key people, they think it is a burden money on their company. If you go to the website here, how many companies make money those adopted the ESG. If you can see, go to stock market, Europe, American, you can see many examples. Really, those people adopted the ESG and implemented. They have very good high remarks and high good profit. But this is one of the challenge we face. We made some people this, oh, how much money will spend for ESG, what the benefit? Of course, they don't realize the benefit in detail. Another point, conduct assessment to identify gaps, because if you like to adopt, I'm sure in the Gulf, most of the Gulf countries and companies, I'm sure in the India as well, there is some data already in place. For example, I have seen maybe some of sustainability, I'm sure some social. You need to conduct very good survey, good gap analysis. Maybe you still need only 40% of the information need, or 50 or less. But most of our people, especially in the Gulf, has achieved a good report in sustainability. I'm sure 50% to 60% of the data are available. The only thing, other 40 to 50 data need to be developed and need to be managed. The last point also, conduct a study to identify priorities. This is a very important message. ESG depends on the risk and how to manage it. Definitely, what if you are working in the company, the people using huge water, that's meaning wastewater is a challenge. But this is not the challenge of IT. IT, they have cyber attack issues. So I'm saying, when you are designing the ESG in the business, the top risk issue, and this you cannot know it unless you have materiality issues, top risk issues. That's why we're repeating that. Conduct a study to identify priorities, set objective KPIs based on the business need, and between brackets, you need to understand the materiality issues in your business. There is no one ESG applicable for all. It depends on the business type. Last point, I think publish ESG report to demonstrate your company performance. This is the result of your efforts. And this is really where to talk to the people locally or internationally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Himal, for that very informative presentation. And ESG is indeed a major pillar of public policy and strategic planning for governments. And it's also true that much needs to be done to use it to its full potential. Dr. Hemant, I have a question for you. Your presentation mentioned that ESG disclosure in the Gulf region is very low in some firms. So what do you think is the reason behind that?
But as I mentioned, the ESG is introduced very late, only 2 years back. If you compare it to sustainability, 10 years, the age of sustainability in the Gulf. The ESG only 2 years. But the second thing, they don't have a good, they don't have seen the workshop among the people, awareness about it. But either they still recently introduced 2 years, and there's no extensive workshop to highlight and address the benefit of ESG for implementation in their business. That's why you can see that result.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. We'll come back to you with more discussions when we open the floor for the audience. And now it's time to invite our Managing Director, Ms. Shalini Govind-Bhala. Shalini is working with Niti Aayog on formulating policy in circular economy for India. Her first book happens to be the first book on circular economy in India. And today, Shalini is going to talk to us about our sustainability platform, which is a one-stop sustainability tool for measurement, evaluation, and improvement of the systems associated with environment and societal impact of business. So over to you, Ms. Shalini.
Thank you, Susanna. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay. I would like to thank my co-panelists, all of them, for sharing their insights. It has been really a wonderful discussion, and I think a very insightful as well. ICCE has been helping companies in evaluating their sustainability and the ESG performances. So today I'm actually, since a lot has already been discussed on ESG, I'll keep my presentation bare minimum with minimum slides, and I'll make it very fast and talk about the product that we have and how this could be used by a lot of companies. So when I was hearing you all out, I heard how many questions were there about reporting in ESG or how to evaluate the ESG. The product that we have, I'm going to share the presentation with you, and I hope you are able to get some insights into that as well. Can you see the presentation, Susanna?
Yes, ma'am, but not in the presentation mode.
Sure. Is it in the presentation mode now?
Not sure if we can see the notes and everything. It's not in the presentation mode.
Well, okay. So ESG is increasingly becoming popular. This is maybe because the investors, the way they are evaluating the business performances, even a few stock exchanges require some level of ESG reporting and disclosures that have been mandated. Mutual funds, brokerage firms are now switching to the products that employ ESG. So that is a very important reason why organizations and companies need to report their ESG. And when we talk about reporting of ESG, there are multiple standards and frameworks which are required to streamline and produce simplified reports. A framework agnostic report with performance standards and benchmarks is the need of the hour. And as I think Namita and Nakul were discussing, there are multiple standards that are available in the market, which makes reporting even more difficult for the organizations. So our product, the product is artificially intelligent and based on machine learning. It is integrated with an analytical tool that is a one-stop digital solution to your sustainability insights and augmentation. We have helped organizations to calculate and prepare their carbon footprint, ESG, EHS, CSR reports. The dashboard also allows grading and peer-to-peer comparative study. The software also allows to input almost 308 plus data points. So these are again different rating standards and sector-wise relevant KPIs as well. Multi-layer data modeling and two-phase data validation ensured an unbiased ESG score generation for the organizations. ICC and its partners helps the organizations to generate best-in-class reports for board meeting and strategies. Our consulting and advisory services have helped them to develop short and long-term strategies and solutions as per their requirements and best practices. We are one-stop solution, as I said, to evaluate, measure, improve, and strategize your company's ESG score. Working on triple bottom line, we have been instrumental in creating greater business value for our clients. We are partners, Almadar and Azairo Infratech, the software, and we will welcome any queries that come up about the software. If your organization is looking at ESG evaluation using any tool, you're most welcome to write to us at the email ID given here, and we'll be happy to answer your queries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shalini, for bringing that into the knowledge of the audience. And I would also like to inform the audience that ICC is organizing a roundtable discussion on the issues faced by the companies in ESG. And we will be inviting chief sustainability officers and pick up their problem areas when it comes to ESG. With that, I would now to open the floor for questions. So if you have any questions for any presenter or related to the sustainability tool, you are most welcome to type that in the Q&A box. And I would also like to invite all the other speakers to the screen so that we can take up some remaining questions. Right. So I would like to begin with Mr. Al Anazi's question. He asked how the organization can achieve high ESG rate while there is variety in third-party criteria evaluation. So, Mr. Nakul, would you like to take that up?
Yeah. So good question, though, but it's still a a confusing task. It is just not for me and all across the different top-rated companies who have been who have this high ESG rating. This is like the example of the Tesla was given by the Namita. We get to see that the framework which has been used to evaluate ESG, that really counts a lot, right? How do you are defining the indicators? What are your key themes, and then the categories? So, having said that, I personally believe that the third-party evaluation shall not be kept in mind while you implementing an ESG within the company, because it is a like these are all non-financials numbers have been kept in a qualitative manner till now. While we are trying to put that a quantitative number, we really know that what has been performed, right, on this side of the social. Let's suppose you are conducting training hours for your employees, so that you see that you're doing some activity there. So rather not to get bothered by the third party evaluation, but again becomes important while you go to the investor, the kind of a framework they are using. There it becomes important. But I personally believe, in my opinion, you can use a one single framework, uh, you know tend to align with it for a particular period of time, and then even if the third party has some recommendations, check those. If you think those recommendations are purely based on a one framework, then you need not to bother about it. But if it really brings an insight for you that you have not been performing good in this part, or it could be again that you are missing that particular data, so those
Right.
shall be answered.
Thank you, Nakul, for answering that. Dr. Ahmed or Nishan, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, Nakhal, I think good answer. I just to add, because the risk also they play important things. This is when we focus to have high rate, how you managing your risk, because in the end of the day is you looking the top risk in your area. This is number one. Number two, over with your peer peoples. I mean, if you are starting from A or B, C, C, that's meaning if you look to the head criteria, depending how you're managing and approaching high performance in the risk you are managing. The software will helping you, just Shalini now presented, to give you where are the missing area and how to get best performance. I think this is the good tools to understand where you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Nishant, we had a question for you earlier. So Miss Cynthia says, regarding Philips' global value chain, what cooperation is given to countries that do not have the capacity to recycle or threat the equipments or supplies that have ended their useful life?
You mean what cooperations do we do with the supply chains, or right? Or
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, so I think we also partner, and I think that's when the whole collaboration and co-creation part comes in. So we also partner with a lot of local recyclers, because in certain cases of medical equipments, you are also not allowed to bring it back outside of the country, and therefore you would need to, yeah, collaborate with local recyclers to also responsibly repurpose some of these products locally. And I think that has been quite successful so far. And I think that's what we try to do for a lot of big equipments. We try to bring it to our manufacturing unit here at West and then refurbish it. But also, if it's not feasible or if the regulations do not allow it, we connect with a local recycler and then try to find a solution there.
Right. Thank you. Then we have a question from Mr. Valiappan. He says sector-wise life cycle costing is very limited. So in the absence of LCC, is there any alternate costing method recommended to decide on the finance suitable for the new projects? If any speaker would like to take that up.
Yeah, I'll try to answer to my limited knowledge in that space. Life cycle costing is it's more of a, as we know, it's an accounting method. So it involves the development cost, a utility or the service cost, and recycling or a reprocessing cost. While when we see that it is not available for a particular sector, right? So we really need to define the business we are into, and I primarily believe that it could not be this. This might be possible that we don't have a consolidated cost available, but when we break down into a development cost, utility, or recycling, reprocessing, so those costs are I won't say readily available, but those costs can be derived from a from the different geographies. As we know that if it's a pure invention, then it's a different ballpark game. But if it's a part of innovation, then finding out a cost should not be difficult. So I'm not in my practice, I have not come across to to assess a life cycle of any product or a particular business sector. There could be any alternative method, but I think that if you break down into a smaller elements, those element cost are available to us using different innovations happen across the regions.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Nakul. Then we have another question from Ms. Jitnyasa. She says, how to do materiality assessment for ESG? How to do materiality assessment for
Yes,
ESG?
actually, materiality, when this is a very important subject. Materiality, you have two methods. One method to first to understand from the data available in companies and to build the expertise. The second, how the people in the company look to prioritize issue. I mean, there is a three areas. One, you know as expertise what the top issues in your mind. The second, you will make interview discussion with the people in the company. You give them a list of those issues, maybe 11 issues, climate, risk, flooding. Then you can monitoring what is the top issues from their mind. Another third, from the customer, people deal with that first. Then after that, you take it to your office, analyze that, and you will come up, this is the top issues. And you will have, this is 5 or 6 top issues. This is, we call it materiality issues. Sometimes another method we have workshop top level and second level. This is first designed for that purpose. And you have as the independent person to have also source for that client. These are the two methods you can define the materiality. And you come up next day after went to the company, guys, I made a survey, internal, external, the expertise. This is the top issues to you. And that's what the investor like to see when you make business.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for answering that. We'll take one last question from the audience. So this question is from Mr. Deepak Kumar. He's asked, is ESG applicable to eco-inclusive social enterprises? Is ESG applicable to eco-inclusive social enterprises? Yes, Mr. Nishant.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. But actually, if you really look at the whole eco-inclusive enterprises and how it's being named, it inherently ESG should be part of the enterprise itself. So that's when I look at the likes of maybe you have already heard about organizations like Tony Chocoloni or other big organizations that are more of a B Corp organization, in which the sustainability is just inherently part of doing business. So indeed, ESG would be applicable to them, but if it's a eco-inclusive social enterprise or something of that sort, I'm not too sure what it exactly means. But if it's a social enterprise with a clear purpose, then ESG is all inherently part of their entire mission, vision, and also the strategy and also the implementation part. So, yeah.
Right. Before closing, Nishant, we have one more question for you. How does recycling of CFL taking place for Philips in India, and how could it be a part of supply chain?
That's a quite a specific question, and I don't think I'll be able to explain or tell you the exact conditions in India. But what we do exactly what I just mentioned before, we have recycling partners locally, and also specific to different equipment. So if it's an ultrasound, we have a recycling partner for ultrasound systems. If it's a CT scanner or MRI scanner, maybe we would have a recycling partner there. So those partnerships we do maintain, and then we try to leverage that for local recycling units also.
Right. Thank you so much, Nishant, and thank you, Nakul and Dr. Ahmed, for being with us today. With this, we come to the close of the event. I would like to thank all the attendees for your valuable presence in today's event, and we hope this webinar could prove insightful for you. We look forward to seeing you in our upcoming events on ESG. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.